What is up, YouTube? Welcome back to another edition of Dine Melchama, specifically the Eglah Arufa. Okay, so we're going to be looking at Dine Melchama, specifically the Eglah Arufa, and I am going to read Psukim Aleph through Bet and all the Parshanim on them, and then Sammy is going to read Gimel through the end and all the Parshanim on them too. And then we'll put this.
What? A video?
Gotta love the parents. Where were we? So let's begin. So Parak Chaf Aleph, we're in Parshat Shoftim. Ki yimsei chalal ba'adama asher Hashem Elokecha notein lecha lirishta nofel ba'asadeh lo noda mihi kahu. So if a corpse was found on the land, and fallen in the field, and no one knows who killed the guy, pasuk bet. V'yatzu zikanecha v'shoftecha umadidu el ha'arim asher sivivot hechalal. The judges should go out and they should measure and see like which cities are around the corpse. So just this question to think about. One of the questions that we have, and Sammy will ask the others later on. But is it important? Where the fallen man or the dead guy has come from. Like, is that important, any significance or not? So just keep that in mind. So I know I'm only reading the first two psukim of this passage, but the way we split it up is that pasuk aleph is like the problem, the whole situation. Pasuk bet through hay would be how to do the Eglah Arufa. And pasuk vav till 10 in the end would be like hateguvat, like the reaction to doing the Eglah Arufa. So the Ibn Ezra, says on pasuk aleph, just a little summary, that if a man is fighting with his oyev, and after the Melchama is over, you find a dead man in the field, you have to do an Eglah Arufa. So Rashi on pasuk bet, there are three Rashis. So the first one, so he asks, so who are the people that go check out this body? So Rashi says it's the Sanhedrin, the people of the highest court. Second Rashi is Rashi Umadidu. So he asks, what is the Sanhedrin supposed to be looking for? So he says they're looking for the place where the body lies, I guess obviously to determine what to do after, which leads into the next one. The third Rashi, El Harim Asher Sivivot Hechalal, he says that they're looking for all the cities surrounding them to go see if the body has come from that city.
Hi there, I'm here to teach you about Eglah Arufa, moving on from Pasuk Gimel and Perek Chaf Aleph in Sefer Devarim. So there is the city that is closest to the Chalal, closest to the dead body that's found. The Ziknei Ha'ir, the elders of the city, will take an Eglat Bakar, a baby calf, who hasn't had any damage done to it or any sort of work done with it. And so the question raised by the Rava here is, who are Ziknei Ha'ir? Who are the people that are going to be responsible for taking this baby calf? And the answer is very, very straightforward. It's what you would have probably assumed on your own. It's just the Ziknei Ha'ir Shekrovim Laguf V'Hashoftim. It's the people who are closest to the body as well as the Shoftim. So it's not just the Ziknei Ha'ir that are going to be responsible for moving the calf, but also the judges from the town. Hi there. So moving on to pasuk Daled on Eglah Arufa. The Horidu Ziknei Ha'ir Hahi as Eglah al Nachal Eitan Asher Lo Yaved Bo V'Lo Yizaraya. So the elders of the ear will bring the Eglah down to Nachal Eitan, where it has been worked, or anything like that. And they'll essentially pretty much break its neck there, which would in turn kill the Eglah. So Rashi brings up 2 points here that he would like to discuss. The first one is on Nachal Eitan, And the question he states is, why would they bring the Eglah to Nachal Eitan? Is there any sort of significance to it? What's the need to bring it to Nachal Eitan? What's the big deal? So the answer is actually very interesting. It's so that it won't be used as any, the Eglah won't be used as any sort of a shrine. And it's interesting because Bnei Israel is known for using Eglahs as shrines, particularly, most notably, in the case of Project-Eglah, Har Sinai with the golden calf, and Hashem didn't want to see this possibly repeat and happen again. Hence, they made sure to bring it down to Nachal Eitan. And the second thing that he brings up is the word V'arfu. And so with Arfu, Rashi pretty much asks, what sort of requirements does the Eglah need to have? And so the answer is, it has to be of 1 year of age. It cannot be pregnant. So looking at Pasuk Vav, the Pasuk states, V'chol ziknei ha'ir ahi hakrovim el hachalal. So all of the elders of the city who are close to the halal or close to the dead body, they shall wash their hands al ha'eglah harufa v'nachal, on top of this eglah harufa, on top of the calf. That's banachal. That's a Nachal Eitan. Hi there. So moving on to Pasuk Zayin, discussing Eglah Arufa, the Pasuk says, V'anu v'amru, and the Zikenu of the ear will say, Yadenu lo shafchu et hadam hazeh ve'einenu lo ra'u. We didn't do it. The blood's not on our hands, and we didn't see anything happen. We didn't see it. We have nothing to do with it. So Rashi here for Pasuk Zayin has a very interesting take. He takes a look at the words Yadenu lo shafchu, and he asks a question: what makes us believe, what would entail us to think that the Ziknei Ha'ir aren't responsible in any way for killing the person? It's a pretty interesting take. I wouldn't have thought of that. What would you think of that? Would you ever question the Ziknei Ha'ir? It's very interesting because the Pasuk says that the Ziknei Ha'ir will immediately try to acquit themselves, try to get themselves out of the loop, and yet at the same time, and so for Pasuk Zayin, the Rava takes the other half of the Ziknei Ha'ir's claim, which is that they didn't see anything happen. So he asks simply, why would the Ziknei Ha'ir need to say this? Okay, they didn't spill the blood, so why would they need to say it? They didn't see anything happen. They're not responsible for it. So the answer is that it's a sign, it's a siman, that they're taking some sort of responsibility for what happened. Meaning that, in a sense, you can say, alright, it sort of happened on their watch, it sort of happened, it's not necessarily their responsibility, but they could be somewhat, to some degree, held accountable. Are they necessarily? No, but it's a sign that they're willing to take that responsibility and step up to the plate as leaders of the city and really try to set the example for the rest of the people. So talking about Pasuk Chet here, it pretty much discusses how the nation can atone itself for this type of thing. And Rashi comments, he asks a simple question, how can the relieve themselves of this chet, atone themselves for this sin? And so the answer is, the commandment, they have to do this mitzvah. So basically, going back to the question, what happens if you end up finding the dead corpse? The answer is you have to do Eglah Arufa, and if you do that, you've been atoned for the sin. And here we have the last pasuk, Pasuk Tet. So you shall take away the innocent blood, you should take away the corpse from your midst, from within you, and you should do what's righteous, you should do what's good from the eyes of Hashem. So Rashi here comments on the word V'atat Zeba'er, which is basically what that you shall move. And he asks the question, if we find the murderer, let's say we have the corpse, and now we find the murderer, so what do we do? So the answer is very simple. Once you find the murderer, even if he just pops up or you look for him and he happens to be found, you should actually kill the murderer. It's an automatic death sentence pretty much. You should kill him. And the Rashbam also comments on this. He says, He says the exact same thing as Rashi. He says, pretty much, if you find the murderer to this case, you have to kill him. He's responsible. He took a life, so his life should be taken also. So it's very interesting how Rashi and the Rashbam have parallel opinions on the exact same issue. And it's notable because it shows that they all shared similar morals, similar mindsets for this sort of case. It's a case of murder here that you're dealing with. You have, of course, a dead body, and it's a case of murder. So you have to rationalize what's going on here and realize that, in the end, there is someone at fault. And Rashi and Rashbam both agree that if you find that person at fault, he should be held fully accountable for what he's done wrong.
So just an interesting thing that the article that we read by Nechama Leibovitz, so she asks her first question, she asks a question and she says, what basically is the reason for the whole ceremony of the Eglah Arufa? So she brings two, count them two, she'elot from the Abarbanel. So his first question is that if the reason for the tekes and the ceremony is for the kapara and the forgive is the kapara. Wow, that made no sense whatsoever. Let's try this again. If the Eglah Arufa is purposed for atonement, how does the Eglah Arufa atone for the sin that the tzibor did? But if the tzibor didn't sin, so then why is there a tekes? Good question. I know. So the Rambam says, he answers this question, said the whole goal of the mitzvah is to actually weed out the Rotzeach, the guy that killed the fallen soldier or man. That his thinking is that if there's a whole ceremony, rumors will be spread, and maybe there'll be like a snitch that comes out and weeds out. But the Ramban argues that by figuring out and weeding out who the Rotzeach is doesn't atone for the sin that the tzibor has committed. So the Abarbanel says that the reason or the goal of the mitzvah is actually to shed light on the community. Can't even talk properly anymore. On the community, so against being bystanders. Like the Eglah Arufa should act as a shock for them. But he says that if there are so many, people being killed, then they would stop the mitzvah of Eglah Arufa because it wouldn't be a shock anymore if it happened so often. So the Malbim actually, says a whole different thing about the whole case, of the Eglah Arufa and the Rotzeach, and he says that it's actually the responsibility of the Zikanim why this happens. So he first says that it's actually the fault of the tzibor that a Rotzeach needs to kill in order to get money to go buy food. And a second thing is that it's actually the fault of the Zikanim that they're not, watching over their roadways, and that's why, someone gets killed. Nechama concludes with saying that don't be a bystander, and that's why we do the Eglah Arufa, to get the community involved and to show what's happening in the world so that stuff like this doesn't go in vain.